And so for some perspective on this day, what it feels like and crucially what it means, we are joined by Keith Mays, Professor of History and African American Studies at the University of Minnesota, and Tashira Garraway, founder of Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence. And Tashira, we really need to start with you. You went to the courthouse to be there today. You are still out there. What was that moment like for you, and how are you?
I'm okay. So Courtney Ross, which is George Floyd's significant other, she called me and asked me would I be with her today down at the courthouse as she hears the verdict. So we were down there together. We hugged, we cried together. And I'm just grateful to see someone in history get what a lot of families deserve. I think this was the beginning, but I don't think we're finished. I think we got many more officers to get off the street that have been brutalizing and killing minority and Black and Indigenous people in our communities. The light is on Minnesota for a reason. The biggest high-profile cases in history have come from Minnesota, and it's time for a change.
So Keith, just listening to what Tashira is saying, all the perspective of this day, legally, yes, this day was about accountability for George Floyd's murder. But as Tashira says, there's so much more to it. Can you help round that out for us?
Tashira is absolutely right, because this is the culmination of justice for the Floyd family and for the community at large. But this is only the beginning. The question becomes, what's next? Are we really going to transform police departments not only in the Twin Cities and in the state, but around the country? What are we going to do? This has been politicized way too long. We need to do what's right by families who have lost loved ones, and we need to do right by history.
So can you help us with some specifics here, both of you, but Tashira, we'll start with you. What specifically will it take for justice to actually feel like justice?
It will take all of the rest of these officers for all of these hundreds of murders that led up to George Floyd to be held accountable. There's been over 470 murders at the hands of law enforcement here in the state of Minnesota in the last 20 years, almost 500 bodies. And only one man has been held accountable, and that's a minority man that killed a white woman, Justine Damon. So up until today with George Floyd, but there's hundreds of more murders of Black men that led up to George Floyd. The biggest and the highest high-profile cases in the world have come from the state of Minnesota. George Floyd, Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, Dante Wright. So it's a clear indication that this place has an issue here in Minnesota. And for every high-profile case, there's 100 murders behind every high-profile case that you see. And so it will take all of because that was only one man. We got hundreds of more officers out here. And the only reason why George Floyd's case wasn't swept under the rug like the rest of our families and covered up is because it went Facebook Live and it spread everywhere, and they weren't able to cover it up like they've done hundreds of more murders prior to George Floyd. Minnesota needs to be under federal investigation. And I've been stalked, I've been harassed, I've been followed, all these things by the police for fighting for my family and helping other families. That's why I started my organization, Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence, because I wanted to give resources and support to those families. And right now, this state doesn't help those families with anything, and my organization is the only one that does, along with Communities United Against Police Brutality.
And Keith, when you said that there's a model that you're looking for, again, can you help us understand specifically what it takes to have this justice feel like it?
We're just saying that for traffic stops or for any small, slight misdemeanors, you don't have to have a cop show up with a Glock, or cops who think that they have their hands on tasers, but they have their hands on the service revolvers. You can have people who are equipped to deal with issues around domestic violence, mental health issues. I think that we have to be smarter about community policing, and that the cops only know one way in which to deal with the public, and that's with aggressive force. Why is it that it's only one kind of way to deal with community residents, with citizens? of cities and states. When you come upon them and use this brute force that oftentimes results in murder, we have to stop this.
One last question, last quick thought to you to share, if I may. How will you explain this day to little kids?
Oh, wow, that's a deep question. You know, I have a son with the father of my son, Justin Tigan, who was killed by the police. And so one thing that I say is just, you know, son, this gives you hope. Today gives us hope that there will be a change so that he will never have to go through what his father went through. That he will never have to worry about being beat to death and thrown in the dumpster, or George Floyd being suffocated with a knee while he screams out for his mother. I want to tell him to look at my fight and know that if you fight for something, there's a chance that you will win. But if you sit back and just take it, then they'll keep doing it. And that's why it's imperative that we no longer sit back and just take it. We have to fight for what we fought for and won today. If we didn't fight for it, they would have did the same thing they did with all the rest of our cases. So I just want the young children to know, if you fight for something that you believe in, that it's a chance that you will win.
Tashira Garraway, Keith Mays, we thank you both for taking the time for us today.
Thank you.